What's up, everybody? Marvel Cross 316 back with another comic book flashback. Today we are looking at Detective Comics issue number 30. This issue came out in August of 1939, and today we are going to be looking at the second appearance of Dr. Death and just basically the return of Dr. Death. We thought that Dr. Death had died in that fire from last issue in issue number 29, but apparently he didn't. And so now Batman is going to have to once again go up against Dr. Death here. And so how did Dr. Death survive that big fire from last issue? We'll figure out all this. If you don't remember what happened from last issue, go back and look at my review of issue number 29 as I looked at basically Batman or Detective Comics issue number 29. But now we're looking at issue number 30 today. Before we get started, we got to give credit where credit is due. This is brought to you by Bob Kane. I mean, he is the man that started drawing Batman, and without him, we probably wouldn't have had a Batman comic series that have lasted this long. And so we see here that less than 2 weeks ago, the Batman saw his sworn enemy, the grim Dr. Death, burn to ashes in a fire that wrecked an entire house. And now we have Bruce Wayne. He's in his little mansion here, and he's reading the newspaper, and he reads, "Strange death overcomes man. Victim queer disease turns purple. Doctors baffled." So he starts to think, and he's like, only Dr. Death could be at the bottom of this, yet he is dead. I wonder. It's strange, this hunch of mine that he is still alive, almost a certainty. And so what he's going to do then is he's going to pay a visit to the dead man's home, and he says that he's a reporter and he wants to speak to Mrs. Jones. And we see the maid says, "Just a minute," but she says it in French. And we see here that Bruce Wayne is going to talk with Mrs. Jones, and she says, "Yes, my husband received a threatening note that unless he paid $500,000 to a Dr. Death, he would die." And then we see Bruce Wayne's like, "I was right, he still is alive." And then she says, "We have no more money. John lost it in the Great Depression, but we have some diamonds. It was John's hobby to collect them. I haven't seen them for years. I must get them out, for I need some money." We recall from back in the 30s that there was a Great Depression, and now, as we see in 1939 here, we're also beginning the Second World War. And so a lot of this great historical stuff going on at this point in time. And then I see Bruce Wayne says, "I'd advise you to have those diamonds removed to a safe place, Mrs. Jones." And so Bruce Wayne walks out of her place and he says, "Nearly 6. I think I'll get a bite to eat, then return to Mrs. Jones' living room. I'm afraid Dr. Death knows of those diamonds." And yes, he does know, so he's going to change to Batman. He gets in his car here, his little red car that he's been driving in the last few issues, and he's going to scale this wall, and basically he's going to go into this house here where he's going to be looking and searching for those diamonds. This is basically Dr. Death's place here. And he looks under this picture frame, and there's this hidden vault. And this is where we're going to see Dr. Death. He's all bandaged up. His face has basically been burned in that fire. And we meet a new person. This is not Jabba, but this is Mikhail. It's another guy that's working for Dr. Death. And basically, Dr. Death gives Mikhail the orders to go get those diamonds. Basically, he needs those diamonds so that he can get the plastic surgery that he needs to fix his face, I guess. And so he's going to then break into Mrs. Jones' place here. Batman is already basically hiding behind this curtain. Mikhail notices that the vault has already been opened. Mikhail grabs the jewelry. We see that Mrs. Jones gets up. She says she can't sleep. She needs some hot milk to help. She's walking downstairs. She comes across Mikhail. Mikhail basically takes out a gun, and then Batman comes from behind and takes down Mikhail here. Basically punches him, and he falls into her garden. And then Batman throws the bag of jewelry back to Mikkel here, and then is going to take Mrs. Jones, who fainted, back to her room and basically puts on a wet cloth here so that she can recover. So why did Batman do that? Well, we see here that he's going to give the jewelry back to Mikkel so that then he can follow Mikkel back to Dr. Death. And so that's what he's going to do as Mikkel grabs the bag, gets in his car here. Now we're going to see Batman is going to follow closely behind. We see that then Mikkel, for some reason, goes to this pawn shop. That's kind of weird. Wonder why he did that. And so we soon see here that Mikkel goes back to Dr. Death's place here. And we see Batman's going to scale the wall. He leaps up. He's going to look right into this apartment here. And Batman leaps through the skylight. He notices that Mikkel is going to try to go to sleep here. Batman throws this capsule here full of sleeping gas. It chokes Mikkel. And then Batman's going to search through the room. But he spends a little bit too much time. Mikkel recovers, grabs the gun, tries to shoot Batman. Batman then is going to basically dive out through the window here, and Batman grabs a hold of that silken rope here. And this is crazy stuff, y'all. Look, Batman swings right back to where Mikkel is, and he breaks Mikkel's neck with his foot. So once again, Batman has killed somebody, not purposely, but still, like in these early issues, Batman, I mean, he was on a killing spree. And so Batman was a lot more ruthless in these early issues. So we see here that Batman's going to give a phone call, basically, to Ivan Hurd. He's the guy that's at this pawn shop. And says, yes, the Jones diamonds. I tell you, at Ivan Hurd's. Never mind who this is. So he's calling the police as well. And Batman has a hunch who Ivan Hurd really is. So he's going to pay a visit to Ivan Hurd at his pawn shop. And it looks like Ivan Hurd didn't expect this to happen. He says, what? And Batman says, you're Ivan Hurd, eh? I want these diamonds. They belong to an old lady who needs them far more than you do. And he said, I know you, the Batman. Batman says, and now maybe you'll talk. Where is the man who ordered these diamonds brought to you? You may know him by his name of Dr. Death. We see then that Ivan Hurd gets up with a panic. He says, no, you. Batman grabs a hold of his bat rope and notices that this Ivan Hurd is not really a real person, as we take off the mask and the wig, and it just so happens to be Dr. Death himself, whose face has just been burned to death because of that fire, as we see here. So that he's left for the police. Batman was successful in grabbing those jewelries, basically, or leaving it in custody for the cops, basically. And there's a note card that says, meet Dr. Death and his diamonds. They belong to Mrs. Jones. See that she gets them with the compliments of the Batman. So that's how we end this issue, y'all. Hope you liked it. Once again, these early issues, pretty short and to the point. But we'll be looking at issue number 31 coming up next. But until next time, keep reading comics.